Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lacey Garcia, and for those of you I don't know, I'm the founder and CEO of Willow, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you here today, the day before National Financial Wellness Day, or Financial Awareness Day, excuse me. And we are, thrilled that you've taken the time to join us. Financial awareness is critically important, and by taking this 30 minutes to invest in your own financial health and wellness, we hope it's a big gift to you, and we're grateful that you've chosen to do that. So today's webinar workshop is about financial awareness and is addressing two critically important topics when it comes to women and their health and financial wellness. And one of them is divorce, and the next is workplace benefits. And I know I personally would have benefited from a lot of the great guidance and tips and knowledge that's going to be imparted through our terrific coaches on today's call. So for those of you who are not quite familiar with Willow, Willow is a virtual platform and a community of trusted financial experts who are coming together with a focus on financially empowering women throughout their life journeys. And what that means is that we help support women on what's going on in your life, the most critical sort of events and transitions, whether they be happy moments or challenging ones like the loss of a spouse or a divorce or navigating an unexpected career change. And whether we like it or not, money and our relationship with money impacts our overall health and wellness. And at Willow, we believe that should be a good thing. When you're equipped with the right resources, tools, and trusted personalized guidance, we can make a plan and we can be prepared for when life brings unexpected things, and we can pivot and we can address those challenges with strength and with flexibility. I know that I have experienced this both professionally and personally, and sort of my desire to start Willow was because despite the fact that I was actually in financial services, I still struggled when it came to my own personal journey to find the right trusted advisors, to get the right personalized guidance. And I so wish throughout, many journeys, including my own divorce and navigating multiple career changes, that I had the personalized guidance that I know the coaches who are going to be speaking with you today can deliver. So we have only 30 minutes and we like to run on time. So we are going to ask that you hold your questions, and instead of taking the time to address them specifically on the call, instead what we'd like to offer everyone on this call is a complimentary 30-minute one-on-one coaching consultation call where you can get your most burning money question addressed. And we also are offering exclusive pricing for anybody who feels like that they are ready to take a step and wants to work with Willow on an ongoing basis, where we are starting as low as $12 a week with a special offer where you can connect with the coach and then get ongoing email and text support. And then if you're ready to start doing coaching and get more ongoing personalized guidance one-on-one by phone or by video, we have plans that span from 1 month, 3 months, 12 months, and start as low as $32 a week. But without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce Sheila Walsh, who's the GM of Financial Coaching, who is going to kick us off and lead today's webinar. So over to you, Sheila.
Thank you. Thank you, Lacey, and thank you everyone for being here. We're so happy to have you. As Lacey mentioned, we have 30 minutes. It's not a ton of time, so encourage you to put away distractions, come on to the camera if you want, and pull out the workbook that you downloaded from the event website. If you don't have it handy, there's a link in the chat coming here and we can dive in. Today, we're going to talk about 3 things. First, we're going to start with what being financially aware actually means. And then we are going to dive into those 2 areas that women too often really feel like they're lagging behind, and that's during divorce and in the workplace. And so we're very excited to have 2 of Willow's financial coaches here that work with many women in these areas, and we look forward to hearing all of the tips and the strategies that they have to share with us. And before we conclude our workshop, we will be giving away a free gift to one of our attendees, so definitely stay tuned. sometimes, especially as women, we find ourselves feeling emotions of guilt or worry when it comes to money and thinking, shouldn't I know this? Well, I'm here to tell you, you did not miss a class. You didn't miss the memo. And even by taking these 30 minutes to focus on your financial wellness, you're already taking a step forward to change this. I am going to pull up our workbook. Hopefully everyone else has too. And I'm going to remind everyone, in case you didn't know, tomorrow is National Financial Awareness Day. So I know this is not an overly celebrated occasion, but it is a good reminder about why being aware is so important. So why does it matter? Many people this summer especially are spending more time outdoors, and I was recently watching some kayakers on a lake. At first glance, you might look at this picture and think, that looks like a smooth and peaceful experience to float along the water. And while it might seem serene and calm, there's also a lot to be paying attention to. So on this page, we've identified 6 things kayakers are always aware of, and I'm sure there's a lot more than 6, but we felt like that was enough for today. So there is first the view ahead. What's coming up? A twist, a turn, a waterfall. What's in the water around you? Will you be going through grass or a lily pad? If you're with others, what are they doing? Are they speeding ahead? Are they constantly bumping into you? What's happening with the water? Is there a current or waves? What about the shore? Are there tree limbs sticking out that might get in your way? And how about the weather? Those dark clouds in the sky, or is it sunshine all that you see? There's a lot to be aware of in a kayak, so it doesn't mean the experience isn't overwhelming. What's really important to realize when you're in a kayak and you're not aware. I'm just going to pause. I think there's some mute. Somebody could maybe go on. Thank you. And if you don't pay attention to things like the weather when you're a kayak, if you're not aware, you can unexpectedly get caught in the rain. If you're not aware of the current, your boat is going to drift off course. So the good news here is when you are aware, you're more in control. You steer your own boat. And this is just like in life. When you're in control and you are aware, you're the one propelling yourself forward in the direction you want to go. So being financially aware matters to achieve your goals. So I'll now turn it to our first financial coach, Jennifer Sheffer, based in Fairfield, Connecticut, and she is going to share 5 things to be aware of during divorce. Thanks, Jennifer.
Sure thing. Nice to meet everyone. So we all know that divorce is a major issue, right? So it's a huge event in your life that changes a lot of things. And the challenge, especially as women, is we find that we don't know things until we really realize we don't know them. And by then it's too late. So one of the things that's critical when you're dealing with a situation like this is you're approaching a brand new financial reality. Your new financial reality doesn't look and feel like what you're used to. And you have to really focus on that, pay attention to what is your new reality. How do you do that? Well, you have to really start. It's not about doing without. Let's just first start with that. There's no reason that you should absolutely put the brakes on everything and say, I can't do this anymore. How do you deal with that new financial reality, right? And part of that is you have to develop a team. What do you do? Who's in your corner? How many people do you have working for you, with you? Who can you bounce ideas off of? Critical components. Opinions. Everyone has one, right? How do you take a good opinion, or is that advice? Learn to understand the differences between the two. An opinion is an expression of someone's generic feelings. Advice is something that you can actually take and apply to your particular circumstance. So understanding the difference and what's going to be valuable for you as you approach this financial reality are really critical components. Another thing that happens is you are overwhelmed by the choices that you have, both financially, personally, emotionally. If you have children, that's a whole nother addition to the problem, or the challenge, I should say. So how do you deal with those things when you're now operating on a limited budget? You have the same expenses, but obviously not the same income. What are you going to do about that? Well, a long time ago, when we didn't have technology and we didn't have all of the amazing inventions that we have, people bartered and they traded for services. So how do you find the right people that you can barter and trade for? What is it that you need from someone? Maybe what is it that you're willing to do without? How do you change your own perspective and trade within yourself so that it's not so very difficult? The last thing that's really a very big thing is none of us are experts in everything, right? So we have to ask the questions, and there's no harm in asking. Everyone has been through a circumstance where they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know how to address it, how to succeed, how to get past the hurdle. How do you do that? You ask. So taking all of these things as your basic rules as to how to address financial stability when you're dealing with divorce is amazing. There are a lot of people who have been through circumstances better than you, worse than you. They've gone through circumstances that were more challenging than what you've had to face. But someone somewhere has had an experience similar to yours. And the way that you get that confidence in yourself again is to find those people. So is it a professional? Back to that whole team environment situation. How do you deal with a team? Why do you need a team? What are the components of that team? The craziest thing about divorce is you hire professionals to get you through the process. But then what happens when it's over? That's when the real challenges financially come. It's after that first year of living differently, not necessarily worse, but differently. It's a lot of changes in your own personal lifestyle that you have to make. Again, we don't want to sacrifice because sacrifice is a negative connotation. We want to redirect where we put things, how to reallocate our expenses, how to reallocate our income, how to reallocate our mental process. Once we've determined that, then we can really figure out how to succeed through this challenge. It is a challenge. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be incredibly difficult. Anyone who's been through it knows that. I've been through it. As Lacey said, she's been through it. There are a lot of people. It's no longer quite as taboo as it used to be. And the whole thing that you have to keep in mind is to continue to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know that. Don't be afraid to say, what was your experience like? None of our experiences are the same, but some of them are similar. And how do we get that confidence back in ourselves to move forward, to get out of the rut that we're feeling, to put one foot in front of the other? It's not just the financial component that we deal with either when it comes to money and divorce. There are a lot of emotional components to it. Do you have the right emotional staff that can work with you to help you succeed financially? This is not a one bucket arena, unfortunately. When you're dealing with the stresses that life throws at you in a lot of different ways, you really have to be aware of the pitfalls that you're going to fall into. Where are your strengths and weaknesses? Have you done a budget? Do you know what that new reality looks like? If you're used to an income of $50,000, you're now focused on an income of $20,000, that severely impacts your financial state and your mental state. What is it that you have to maybe do less of, but not completely eliminate? Again, including the emotional component in the financial aspects when it comes to divorce is critical. And to be able to do that is difficult. So your team really has to be made up of all of those different people that can help you through it. You need the financial advisor, you need the financial coach, you need the accountant, you need the emotional support. Do you have friends and family that can help you? All of these things are after the fact items that you really need to put into your before plan. Same thing with advice. We're looking at people, everybody has a different level of expertise. A financial coach is going to help you through the mundane issues of it. Your financial advisor is going to help you with your stock selection, with your future, with all of the other components of your financial picture. And again, you have to have all of these different people because they all speak very well with each other and help you create a better overall picture. So again, the big component and the hardest thing about finances when you're talking with divorce is to understand what your new life looks like and to learn how that looks before the event happens. How do you take the first 6 months while you're in that planning phase, while you're going through those difficult conversations with your soon-to-be ex-spouse that you have to address? What does that really look like? Have you learned how to live within those means? And if you haven't, how do we as coaches and how do you as the responsible party actually go about implementing that plan? So again, when we're looking at something like divorce, which is such a heavy emotional piece, money is an emotional topic to begin with. So to have two heavily charged emotional problems going at you at the same time can be detrimental. So look to the people that you can trust. Build your team of advisors that are going to work really well with you. Find out what you can barter and trade. Look for additional services that you might be able to pick up here and there. Where are your expertise? How do you leverage those? You have to come back to, it's not just money, it's you, it's your comfort, and your money plays a big part in that. So that's it in the general parameters of what the struggles are within the divorce arena. It really is about planning and a lot of things in life. And you'll hear from Michelle, planning is a great, great thing that has to be implemented at an early stage. And it's not perfect the first time, and you're going to need to change it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And failure doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be a learning experience, which is really, really great in the long run. So again, learning to live with what the new reality looks like. Plan on having a team that supports you in the direction that you're headed. Look for things that you can trade with, you can barter, you can share. Find your own strengths and weaknesses within you, and how do you convert that into a monetary stream? All of those wonderful things that you have within you really are great. And the way that you direct them and how you include money in it is a critical component.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Coach Jennifer Sheffer. Yes, I see some hands clapping. I totally agree. And very important for us all to remember that we all have strengths and weaknesses, and we all have the power to build a plan based on those. So thank you. We're now going to shift gears and talk about workplace benefits. So we have financial coach Michelle Clark here with us from Costa Mesa, California. If you are just joining, I want to encourage you to pull out the workbook that we have in the chat that you downloaded from the event website as you go along and take notes. So I will now turn it over to Michelle.
All right. Thanks, Sheila. Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to be able to present with you today on workplace benefits. And I spent about 25 years in the employee benefits and insurance field. So I am going to literally rattle off a lot of tips for you today. So I want to just go ahead and jump right into it. So first things first is health insurance. Now, obviously, if you're an employee of a company, you most likely have access to a group insurance plan offered by your employer. And if that's the case for you, obviously don't walk to your open enrollment each year to get on that health plan. If you don't have access to a group health policy, then you'll want to look into getting coverage on your own, because out-of-pocket costs are really the #1 reason for bankruptcies. So this is one of the critical components of your financial wellness plan. And so before I get into the different types of insurance plans, I just want to explain to you, first of all, how insurance even works, because I think it's sort of this vague notion that a lot of people carry. And so the way that it works is that insurance companies negotiate costs for services with a network of hospitals and doctors. And these are negotiated rates. They're a little bit different for each insurance company and network. But what this really means for you is that as I explain how you pay your costs on the different plans, know that your percentages are based on those negotiated rates. Also, should you lose your job, which a lot of people have this year, and you're offered what's called COBRA, which is continuation coverage, just keep in mind that employers, when you're on their health plan, they're typically covering about 50% or more of your premiums while you're employed. So when you go on COBRA, now you're going to be financially responsible for 105% of those premiums. So A good rule of thumb is to just kind of estimate whatever portion of premium cost that you're paying as an employee, and you'll probably end up paying double. So an alternative, though, that you could consider to purchase coverage is through the healthcare exchange, and that can be potentially subsidized based on what your income level is at the time, or it might be a lower cost than what you would pay on COBRA. But you have to keep in mind that just because it's the same insurance company on the exchange as what you had through your employer, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the same type of, like, for instance, prescription benefits. The prescription network might be a little bit different, the formulary. So now, going back to employer-based coverage, there are a few different types of insurance plans that are going to be probably made available to you. The first one is an HMO, which stands for Health Maintenance Organization, and that's what's considered kind of a managed care plan. So you're going to typically pay lower out-of-pocket costs in the form of most likely a co-payment and then maybe some co-insurance. But in turn, you're also very limited to only being able to go to the list of doctors and hospitals that are in the network of providers that that insurance company has contracted with. So the trick here is that if you don't see a doctor that's in the network, then either the service won't be covered at all, or you're going to pay a lot more for that service. So the key with that type of plan is to stay in network. Now, on the other hand, you might also have a PPO plan, which stands for Preferred Provider Organization. And these plans typically have a larger network than an HMO, but they also offer out-of-network coverage. So you could go to any doctor or hospital anywhere in the world, and you're going to have coverage for services, but it's going to be a little bit higher of a cost than you would have if you went in network. So with these plans, you typically pay what's called a deductible. So it's the amount of money that you pay first toward the cost of a service, but you're not done yet. After you pay your deductible, then you're going to have to pay a portion of the rest of those costs, typically 20, 30% of the charges, until you hit what's called an out-of-pocket maximum. So in essence, that's the maximum that you're ever going to have to pay out of your pocket in any given year. So that's really the number that you want to pay attention to, especially if you're someone who has a chronic condition or other major health issues, or you're on a high cost prescription drug. So as I mentioned earlier, the insurance companies always negotiate with the doctors and hospitals within their network to pay them a certain amount per service. And that's what's called the negotiated rate, as I mentioned. And it's the rate from which you're going to then pay your portion of costs. So what's going to oftentimes happen is you're going to get in the mail or maybe delivered electronically an EOB, or an explanation of benefits. Don't freak out when you see the numbers on that thing, okay? It is not a bill. It's just showing you what the service cost and then what the insurance company's negotiated rate is and what they're going to pay the provider. So what you're going to have to wait for is to get that bill in the mail later on. So again, don't freak out over what you see on that EOB. Now, also keep in mind, if you do get into a little bit of a sticky situation where you receive a bill for a service and you just go, I don't have the money to pay this right now, you always have the ability to contact that provider, the hospital, the doctor, and tell them, hey, I can't really afford to pay this right now. Can I go on a payment plan? Or are you willing to reduce the cost of this service so that I can afford to pay it? And then another option that you might have available to you through your employer is an EAP, or an employee assistance program. Now with an EAP, they can typically handle that process for you. So you just have to reach out to them and say, hey, I got this bill. I need to see what can be done to reduce the cost of the bill or to get on a payment plan or whatever. And they'll take it and run with it and get back to you with what they've been able to negotiate. So it kind of takes it off of your plate and off your shoulders to have to take the time to do that. Now, another thing is you'll also probably have available to you a flexible spending account, or FSA, or a health savings account, which is also called an HSA. So with a flexible spending account, you can estimate like how much you think you're going to pay in out-of-pocket healthcare costs or maybe childcare costs in any given calendar year. And then you can opt to have that total taken out of your paycheck on a pre-tax basis throughout the year to then be able to tap into when you need it or want it. The trick here, though, is that you need to spend all the money elected to have taken out before the end of the year. Otherwise, unfortunately, you lose it. And so you got to be really good about estimating what your costs are. Now, on the other hand, with an HSA, the dollars that you opt to have redirected into the savings account, those don't have to be used before the end of the year. So what a lot of people do to build up a savings cushion for future medical expenses is they just let those dollars roll and sit there. If you can afford to do that and still pay for your out-of-pocket costs at the same time, that's a great way to be able to build up some savings for, say, in retirement, when maybe your, out-of-pocket healthcare costs have gone up at that point in time. So great way to be able to use an HSA to save for retirement expenses. So next up are voluntary benefits, and these are plans that you can buy to supplement your health insurance plans because they help pay for expenses that may not be covered by your health plan, such as, maybe your out-of-pocket copays or lost time from work if you're, out of work because of an accident or a certain illness. One thing that I will say about these types of plans, though, is they're not for everyone. So it's really going to be up to you, and maybe when you're working with a financial coach, to decide, whether or not this type of plan is going to be a good one for you to put your money into so that you have that type of coverage later on down the road. And that then leads right into disability insurance, which is critical. If you either live on your own or someone else relies on your income to pay the household bills, like spouse, kids, whoever, maybe dogs, I don't know. So unless you're, living with someone who is taking complete care of you, pretty much anybody is going to benefit from having disability coverage because it's going to replace a portion of your income if you're unable to work for a period of time. And so, when you're out of work, you still have your bills coming in. So with disability coverage, the way that it works is you buy a policy and it's based on your current income level and then the income level that you need to have replaced. So that might be, 60, 70%. You'll also then have to decide for how long you want those benefits to go before they start paying you. So it might be a 7-day waiting period, or it might be as long as 90 days. It just kind of depends on the type of policy that you're buying, and then how much coverage you're going to need. Whether you've got a rainy day fund, so maybe you can tap into that first, or you might already have some other money set aside that you could use during that period of time. Now, on the other hand, you may want to keep that rainy day fund solvent, right? You might not want to tap into it, and the premium is worth paying into so that you don't have to down the road. So just kind of consider that. And then the last feature of disability is just for how long you want those benefits to pay out. They could be, 60, 90, 120, years even, all the way through the rest of your life. So it's either called a short-term or a long-term disability plan, or you could decide to buy both. Depends on what you're trying to cover yourself for. And then we have life insurance, and life insurance can get kind of complicated, but let me just say it can be made much easier. There are some differing opinions as to whether somebody, needs life insurance if they're single and they don't have anybody really depending on them. But just consider, funeral costs, burial costs, cremation costs. Those can run upwards of, $10K or more. So a basic life insurance policy, a term life insurance policy would be a great thing so that your loved ones don't have to take on those expenses, should you die. And obviously, if you do have people who are relying on your income, you're the working parent, or you've got, dual income household and one parent dies, then the other parent now, has to take on additional expenses for, maybe some additional childcare. So a good rule of thumb for level of coverage is really to think about, whose incomes are you needing to replace? Are there going to be additional expenses that are going to come into play, when one spouse dies or the other? And then generally the good rule of thumb is about 10 times your annual income. So you'll want to consider, the life insurance coverage and what it's going to do for you. Now, one thing to think about term versus whole life is that with term coverage, it ends at a certain point in time. So you're going to have to prove insurability or have a plan that can automatically roll over into a new plan. So take those into consideration when you're looking at buying insurance plans. So as I wrap up, I want to mention one other type of coverage that it might be available to you through your employer. It's called long-term care insurance. And this kind of coverage, it's not widely available and it can get kind of expensive. So what you need to know about this is that it's designed to cover services that you might need should you become severely disabled or have a chronic illness that requires 24/7 care. So you'd either be living in a nursing home or hiring somebody to come and care for you in your home to help with things like bathing and feeding and dressing you and that sort of stuff. So it's like the activities of daily living is how they phrase it. So the one thing to consider when buying long-term care insurance is whether you have assets that would need to be sold off to pay for care services. So if you don't have a lot of assets, then there's really nothing to protect. And that's really what long-term care insurance is designed to do, is to protect those assets so they're not drained when you have something like that occur. So just be aware of that, you know, anybody's at risk for needing long-term care, but generally people buy it around the, you know, age of 55 or 60. So I just threw out a lot of information about insurance plans to you. And so I do have that checklist. If Sheila, if you want to bring it up for us, I'd be happy to just kind of mention a few things. So on page 1 is just a summary of what I've spoken about today. And then on the next page are just some of those terms that I went through so that you can refer back to those if you need to in terms of just understanding what they are. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. You definitely did share a lot with us. And I'm sure everyone on this webinar, as we've been going through, has had questions. So we encourage you to write them down, encourage you to think about the timeline in which you would like to get those answers questioned by. And I'm sure once you get going on this and get curious, the list will flow. I mean, we came up with a bunch of things just about kayaks at the beginning of this call. So encourage you to do that. We also want to give our free gift and announce the winner. We do encourage everyone to write things down. And the reason why is because research shows that when people write down their goals, they're more likely to achieve them. In fact, 42% more likely to achieve them. So the winner of our free gift will receive a beautiful customized papier journal. It's a beautiful piece that you can customize for yourself. And the winner is here in the chat. We'll be following up with you via your email so that we can get the content over to you and you can help us to customize it. So Meredith has put the winner here in the chat. We're very excited for Wanda. So Wanda, thank you. And as we wrap up, we do want to make sure that everyone here is reminded that we're here for you. Willow is here for you. So you're eligible for the free complimentary one-on-one coaching call that Lacey mentioned up front. We have a network of fantastic certified coaches like the ones that you've just heard from, and they're here to support women like you. If the divorce content really resonated with you, we encourage you to keep an eye out for the financial advocacy group for women that is going to start up in the fall. And so we have some Willow financial coaches, including Coach Jennifer, that will be managing that program. So we encourage you to sign up when enrollment opens. And we have a variety of packages and pricing options that are available to you should you want to continue with financial coaching in the future. So we here at Willow definitely believe that the more you understand your money, the more possibilities you will see. And we're here for you, happy to take any questions that you have in the future via your financial coaching engagements. And we want to thank you again for spending time with us from all of us here at Team Willow. Enjoy the rest of your day.